So recently, NASA been buzzing because an international team just flagged something huge way out past Pluto, an icy world on a stretched out path that takes it so far from the sun, it basically lives at the edge of everything we know. People are calling it Ammonite, not a cute nickname for clicks. This is a real object, and it changes the conversation about what is lurking beyond the classical Kuiper Belt. Here's what that means, why it matters, and what comes next. First, what actually happened. Astronomers using one of the sharpest eyes on Earth picked up a slow, faint mover in the deep dark. So faint you only notice it when you stack images and watch for the tiniest crawl across the starfield. That faint mover has now been tracked long enough to lock in an orbit, and it's not just another small rock. This thing's on a long, distant loop that puts it in the Sednoid family elite company, only a handful of known worlds with similar orbits. That alone is a big deal. It tells us something sculpted the outer solar system in a way we still don't fully understand, okay? So what is a Sednoid, and why should you care? Think of the solar system like a city with neighborhoods. You've got the inner city Mercury through Mars, then the suburbs, Jupiter through Neptune. Out beyond that, there's sprawl, the Kuiper Belt, home to Pluto, and tons of small icy bodies. Sednoids are like cabins way past the suburbs down a snowy, barely plowed road. They don't come close to the sun like Pluto does. Instead, their closest approach is still far beyond Pluto's neighborhood, and their farthest swing goes so deep into the black that sunlight is almost a rumor. We only knew a few of these, Sedna, Biden, and the Goblin. Now there's a new member of that tiny club, Ammonite. How far are we talking? Close past, still beyond Pluto, and the far end is hundreds of times the Earth. Sun distance. If you're trying to picture that, stop. There's no good human scale. Light itself takes hours to get there. At those distances, the sun stops feeling like a sun and starts feeling like a bright star you could cover with your thumb. And yet, there it is. Another world, minding its business in the cold. You're probably wondering, how do you even find something like that? Here's the play. You use a big, wide-field telescope to take long exposures of the same patch of sky, night after night. When you blink those images, like a flip book, almost everything stays fixed. Stars don't budge, galaxies don't budge, but a solar system object will slide a hair in the same direction each night. You flag that hairline motion. You do it again, a week later. You ask other observatories to confirm. You stack more data, fit an orbit, cut the noise. Then you go hunting in older images, recovery shots. Because sometimes the object photobombed a picture years ago. Every recovery point tightens your orbit, like adding more pins to a string, map until the root pops into focus. And all that is before we even try to size it. Size out there is tricky. Brightness tells you how much sunlight it reflects. How reflective is the surface? That's the catch. Is it dark and dirty like a parking lot after a snow, or frosty and bright like fresh ice? With some reasonable assumptions, based on what we've learned from Pluto, Eris, and Arrokoth, you can land on a ballpark. For Ammonite, the team's early read puts it in the real deal world range. Think a few hundred kilometers across if it reflects light like similar outer belt objects. It's not a planet the size of Earth, relax, but it's not a pebble either. It's closer to a small round world big enough that its own gravity starts making it spherical. That is massive by Kuiper. Belt standards because mass is rare at those distances. Now, here's why. NASA people are paying attention. NASA didn't just wake up and stumble into this for years. NASA's playbook has been to push on two fronts. One, send hardware out there to sniff around. New horizons blazing past Pluto and Arrokoth proved. You can run deep space missions on a shoestring and bring back gold. 2, use the best eyes we've got, space telescopes, like the James Webb, to read heat and chemistry off objects, so faint you'd miss them if you blinked. When a new heavyweight shows up in the data this far out, everybody reaches for the tool belt. Can we get thermal readings to estimate diameter more cleanly? Can we catch infrared signatures to guess at surface ices? Can we dig through Hubble and NEOWISE archives to grab earlier sightings and tighten the orbit? That's the drill. And the drill just spun up for Ammonite. Let's talk orbit, because orbit is the headline. An object's path is a receipt for how it got where it is. Ammonite's receipt says, I've been parked in a safe, distant track since the solar system was young. That track is weird in a specific way, close in still far, far out, far end way out, and that pattern is the Sednoid fingerprint. Now, there are only a few ways to produce that kind of orbit. Maybe a big planet once roamed out there and gravitationally flicked a bunch of objects onto stretched out paths. Maybe a passing star in the sun's birth cluster tugged at proto-Pluto. Belt objects like a slow, gentle pickpocket. Or maybe the early solar system was a full-on demolition derby with migrating giant planets carving channels and leaving oddballs marooned in the deep. Ammonite is new evidence on that cosmic crime scene. The more of these we find, the clearer the fingerprint. Now, I know some of you are thinking Planet 9. The myth, the meme, the ghost. Does Ammonite prove there's a hidden megaplanet out there? Short answer, it doesn't prove it. Longer answer, it feeds the debate in a real way. Some orbits out there look clustered, like they're being herded by a shepherd we can't see. One camp says that's a planet. Another camp says, nah, that's observational bias in early cluster flybys. Ammonite adds a data point that leans toward the outer solar system got shaped early by something, not necessarily a present-day hidden planet. This is where science earns its stripes: more data, less drama. So what does massive mean here? In human terms, take a mid-sized state, freeze it, dim the lights, and park it in a deep freeze where noon is twilight. The gravity isn't enough to walk around and feel a pull like Earth, but it's plenty to hold onto its own material and maybe keep a veneer of exotic ices on the surface: nitrogen ice, methane ice, carbon, monoxide frost, that kind of chemistry. If it's big enough to be round, it's got geologic pride, a history written in craters and fractures, maybe even faint seasonal frosting if sunlight can still move molecules around that far out. And because you asked the right question, how do we know it's not just a random fluke? Let's get into verification. Step 1. Independent observatories nail the same motion. Done. Step 2. Stack longer time baselines to crush uncertainty in the orbit. Ongoing step 3. Measure brightness at different wavelengths to get a better handle on how reflective the surface is. If the surface is dark, you need more mass for the same brightness. If it's bright, less mass. Step 4. If we can, catch a stellar occultation. Watch Ammonite pass in front of a star. The light dips tell you diameter down to kilometers, sometimes even pick up hints of a thin atmosphere or a ring. That's how teams nailed the surprise ring around Quaoar. Same playbook here, new target, quick detour on instruments, because this is where it gets fun. James Webb is a beast for the faint and far. If we can schedule it, you point Webb at Ammonite in the infrared, and you pick up the object's own heat, which is barely anything but not zero. That lets you estimate size without guessing the reflectivity. Combine that with optical brightness, and you get both diameter and albedo. Do that once. Do it again a year later. And you even start to see rotation, how the light curve waxes and wanes as the world spins, hinting at surface patches, darker ice here, brighter slab there. Missions like New Horizons can't swing by everything, but they can pivot their cameras for deep searches and context, and ground-based giants keep drip, feeding astrometry to keep the orbit razor sharp. Now let's pull the camera back. What does another Sednoid tell us about us? The solar system didn't form politely. It was messy, loud, crowded. The giant planets didn't sit where they are now. They wandered, swapped angular momentum like poker chips, and bullied smaller bodies into new neighborhoods. Objects like Ammonite are survivors from that chaos. They are time capsules, keeping the memory of a specific jolt or tug. Every time we catalog one of these, we recover another line in the solar system's diary. You want to know where we came from? These deep freeze fossils are the pages you read. You also get practical payoffs. Mapping the outer reservoir of small worlds tells you how much raw material is out there for comets, helps you gauge risk for long-period comet showers, and even feeds into the whole how common are solar systems like ours question. If our outskirts were sculpted by a passing star, that implies the sun's childhood was spent in a dense stellar nursery. If there's a super Earth hiding out there actually doing the shepherding, that says something very different about how often big planets end up on weird far orbits. Both stories have knock-on effects for exoplanet science. And yes, there's the future mission angle. NASA's already studying what the next outer solar system flagship could be. We've done Pluto up close once. A Kuiper Belt orbiter has been on whiteboards for years, an orbiter that could tour multiple worlds, not just fly by, and actually stay, sniff atmospheres, map surfaces, taste exospheres, and ride along for seasons. A discovery like Ammonite gives that kind of mission more gravity, more targets, more science you can only do in situ. Even before that, you'll see smaller steps, dedicated occultation campaigns to pin down size, James Webb, time to get thermal signatures, ground-based follow-ups to refine rotation period and color. Let me answer a couple of the skeptical questions up front. Could this just be a mistake? The early discovery phase always has uncertainty, but we're past the "is it even there?" stage. Multiple teams have it. The orbit is being refined, not invented. The object's real. Is it bigger than Pluto? No. Different league. Pluto is a heavyweight by Kuiper standards. Ammonite is more like a sturdy middleweight, still massive compared to most pebbles out there. And that's exactly why it's interesting. Big enough to be a world, far enough to be a fossil. Does this mean Planet 9 is toast? Not toast, but the case shifts. Some clustering people used to point at is getting challenged as we discover more objects and fix the biases in how we search. Ammonite adds a precise distant orbit to the ledger, and that strengthens the eerily shaping argument. It's not the final word, but it's a loud word. When will we see a photo like we got of Pluto? That takes a mission, and missions are slow. Best near-term bet is James Webb spectra and better light curves from the ground. Patience here pays off. Pluto went from a fuzzy smudge to a heart-shaped world we all fell in love with in the span of a single flyby. We can do that again for other worlds. We just need the ride. Why Ammonite? Scientists love nicknames that tell a story. Ammonites are spiral fossils, ancient, beautiful, persistent. This world is a fossil of the early solar system. Same vibe. Official designation aside, the nickname sticks, because it fits. Let's get into the how you actually chase it nuts and bolts. Because the craft here is underrated. You need consistency. The object is so far that its apparent motion is glacial. You lay down a cadence, multiple images per night, spaced so you can tease out motion from noise. You correct for the Earth's own parallax or planet's movement. Around the sun adds a wiggle to the apparent path. You match that against a super clean star catalog, so you're not chasing a ghost introduced by a miscalibrated frame. Then you pass the baton across hemispheres, so weather or daylight doesn't break the chain. None of that is glorious. All of it is necessary. That's real science. Boring reps, clean data, big payoff. As the orbit firms up, the predictive power gets fun. You can forecast exactly when and where Ammonite will cross in front of distant stars. Amateurs with good gear can contribute here. Timing the dip in starlight from different cities' lines are like chords in a song. Combine them, and you get shape and size. That's how we learned Arakath was a contact binary before New Horizons ever flew by. That's how we found rings around Quaoar. The same trick can turn Ammonite from dot into measured world without ever leaving Earth. Composition. We won't know in detail for a while, but we can set expectations. Out that far, sunlight is weak and temperatures are brutal. Volatile ices, nitrogen, methane, carbon monoxide can stick around if the body is big enough. Darker tholins, gunk made by radiation cooking simple molecules, can paint the surface reddish over eons. You look at color indices, how bright it is in blue versus red filters, to guess which families of ices and gunk you're dealing with. Couple that with infrared spectra, and suddenly the world isn't anonymous anymore. It has a face. And I want to underscore this. Every one of these finds is cumulative. Sedna cracked the door. Biden. And the goblin pushed it wider. Ammonite just walked in with another piece of the puzzle tucked under its arm. When you add enough pieces, the picture stops being a mystery and starts being a map. Are we looking at the wreckage of early planet migration? The fingerprint of a stellar flyby? A whisper from a hidden planet? The map will tell us. So, where does this leave us? We've got a new heavyweight citizen of the deep solar system. Its orbit is weird in exactly the way scientists care about. It likely sits in that sweet spot where it's big enough to be a world, small enough to still be raw, and distant enough to be a time capsule. NASA teams and their international partners are now doing what they do best, pointing every useful eye at it, running the models, betting observation time on the most revealing measurements, and this part matters. letting the data decide the story, not the other way around. And I'll close with this because it's the part that hits me. We are still finding major worlds in our own backyard. Think about that. Not galaxies a billion light years away, right here, orbiting our same sun, circling in an ancient dance. We're only just learning the steps, too. When you look up tonight, you won't see Ammonite. It's too far, too faint, but now you know it's there. And that knowledge is a crack of light under a big door. We push it open with every discovery like this. So, yeah, recently NASA have been all over this because it's real, it's big, it's far, and it matters. A new fossil from the beginning of the solar system just rolled out of the dark. Now the work starts,